We're continuing to take a look at the OHL history season by season. Hopefully, you've enjoyed this journey so far. If this is your first time checking it out, I do have the other seasons from 1980, 81 up until 90, 91 on the playlist OHL history, so you can check that out here. But in the meantime, let's take a look at the 1991-92 Ontario Hockey League season. 16 teams still playing 66 games. And we only had one relocation this year. That's the Dukes of Hamilton. They would move to Guelph to become the Storm just 2 seasons after the Platers had moved to Owen Sound, and also 2 seasons after the Toronto Marlboros ended up in Hamilton. So there's been a lot of movement in the late 80s and early 90s, and we're going to see a little more stability over the next few years. And as the Ontario Hockey League continues to get healthy as a business from this point on. Now, with this move and with the recent expansion of adding the Detroit Ambassadors, the Ontario Hockey League expanded the playoff format. So now the top 7 teams in each division would make the playoffs, with the first seed getting an automatic bye into the second round. So with having 8 teams in both divisions, they wanted to make it fair and have more teams have some postseason experience. Now, let's dive right into the standings. Starting off the Leyden division, it would be the Peterborough Petes leading the charge. They had a record of 41, 18, and 7, good for 89 points. Right behind Peterborough would be the North Bay Centennials, a record of 40, 21, and 5, 85 points. The Cornwall Royals back in the playoffs, finishing third in the division. 38, 22, and 6 was their record for 82 points. The Sudbury Wolves, 33, 27, and 6, good for 72 points. The Oshawa Generals finishing 5th. They would have a record of 31, 26, and 9 for 71 points. The Ottawa 67s, 32, 30, and 4 for 68 points. And claiming the final playoff spot in the Leyden division would be the Belleville Bulls with a record of 27, 27, and 12 for 66 points. And on the outside looking in, once again, would be the Kingston Frontenacs, a record of 16, 44, and 6, 38 points. It was just a real tough go for the Kingston Frontenacs in the late 80s and early 90s. Now in the Ems division, the Soo Greyhounds, after winning the 1991 OHL Championship, they just continued their momentum and would finish first in the Ems division with a record of 41, 19, and 6 for 88 points. The Niagara Falls Thunder, second, 39, 23, and 4 was their record for 82 points. The London Knights, they would finish third with a record of 37, 25, and 4 for 78 points. The Kitchener Rangers, fourth, with a record of 29, 30, and 7 for 65 points. The Windsor Spitfires, they would finish fifth with a record of 25, 33, and 8 for 52 points. The Owen Sound Platers back in the postseason with a record of 23, 41, and 2 for 48 points. While the Detroit CompuWare Ambassadors would make the playoffs for the first time in franchise history with a record of 23, 42, and 1, good for 47 points. Well, the Guelph Storm would miss the playoffs in their first year back in the Royal City with a pretty rough record of 4, 51, and 11 for 19 points. Now, this season, the Detroit Ambassadors, they would move in with the Detroit Red Wings, playing out of Joe Louis Arena. At this point, Peter Karmanos and Mike Ilitch had a pretty good relationship at this point, as they both wanted to see hockey continue to grow in the Motor City. So why not bring the professional team and have the junior hockey team join them in the same barn? For the Sudbury Wolves, they finally had a breakthrough this year. We'll talk a little bit more about it in the playoff tree, but still, they won their first round since the 1979-80 season. That was before the Ontario Hockey League formed. So the fans in the Nickel City, they were missing the playoffs year after year, growing frustrated, but now starting to see this team come together. And who knows, maybe a championship would come. Although to this day, we're still waiting for a championship for the Sudbury Wolves. They would come close, and we have that video coming up in the next few days. The Soo Greyhounds, they made a huge trade during this season. They acquired future NHLers Chris Simon from the Ottawa 67s just to add a little more grit. And this is the point where the Greyhounds are in the middle of their dynasty. And it was kind of started by the trade of Eric Lindros to the Oshawa Generals. So just everything they got back really helped propel this organization. And also having Ted Nolan on the bench as your head coach really put this Greyhounds team into a great trajectory. So the Greyhounds dominant once again going into the playoffs. And before we get to the playoffs, let's take a look at the top scorers from the regular season, as it would be uh, Todd Simon. I almost said Chris Simon. He was traded to the Soo Greyhounds. Todd Simon was the leading scorer that season. That he's from the Niagara Falls Thunder, 53 goals, 93 assists, 146 points. Second in scoring, Brett Sagan of the Ottawa 67s, 34 goals, 100 assists. Unreal there from Sagan, and that's 134 points to his credit. Third in scoring is John Spoltor, the North Bay Centennials, 47 goals, 84 assists, 131 points. Darren McCarty of the Belleville Bulls, 55 goals, 72 assists, 127 points. Chris Taylor of the London Knights, he had 48 goals, 74 assists, 122 points. Brent Gretzky, he was playing for the Belleville Bulls. He had 43 goals, 78 assists, 121 points. Ralph Intravano of the Soo Greyhounds, 50 goals, 63 assists, 113 points. Eighth in scoring would be Jake Grimes of the Belleville Bulls, 44 goals, 69 assists, 113 points. Ninth in scoring from the Soo Greyhounds, Colin Miller, 37 goals, 73 assists, 110 points. And rounding out the top 10, Jason Daw of the Peterborough Petes with 53 goals, 55 assists, good for 108 points. So now going into the postseason, the Peterborough Petes and Soo Greyhounds, they finished first in their respective divisions. And with that, they had buys. They automatically advanced to the second round of the OHL playoffs. In the division quarterfinal, we would see the North Bay Centennials. I think that's the first time in the series. I almost said North Bay Battalion. The North Bay Centennials, they would defeat the Belleville Bulls in 5 games. And then the Cornwall Royals, they were upset by the Ottawa 67s in the first round in 6 games, while the Sudbury Wolves, as I mentioned, their first playoff series win since the 1980 playoffs. They would win in 7 games against the Oshawa Generals. Now in the Ems division, we would see the Niagara Falls Thunder defeat the Detroit Ambassadors in 7 games. The London Knights, they needed 5 games to take care of the Owen Sound Platers, while the Kitchener Rangers defeat the Windsor Spitfires in 7 games to advance to the quarterfinal. In the quarterfinal, we would see the Peterborough Petes. They would take care of the Ottawa 67s in 5 games, while the North Bay Centennials would sweep the Sudbury Wolves 4-0, as Sudbury making their first trip to the second round in quite a while up to this point. In the Ems division, Sault Ste. Marie and Kitchener would battle it out, and it would be the Greyhounds winning that series in 7 games, while the Niagara Falls Thunder took care of the London Knights in 5 games. In the division final, the Peterborough Petes run would come to an end as the North Bay Centennials would take it in an upset in 5 games over the Maroon and White. And on the Ems division side, the Soo Greyhounds would take out the Niagara Falls Thunder in 5 games. Sault Ste. Marie and Niagara Falls meeting quite a bit in the postseason while the Greyhounds were on their dynasty run here. And for the J Ross Robertson Cup, it would be the Soo Greyhounds taking care of the North Bay Battalion in 7 games, as Sault Ste. Marie winning back-to-back J Ross Robertson Cup trophies here in the 1990s. Now, at the 92 Memorial Cup playoffs, it would be the Seattle Thunderbirds. They would be the hosts, and joining them as well would be the Kamloops Blazers. They would represent the Western Hockey League, while Verdun College, they represented the QMJHL. Now, this was a much better tournament for the Greyhounds after they went 0-3 the year before. This season, they would be a perfect 3-0. However, they would lose in the Memorial Cup final 5-4 to the Kamloops Blazers. So the Greyhounds getting to the Memorial Cup, having a much better showing, but this time losing to a very strong Kamloops Blazers team from the Western Hockey League. Your award winners this season, Todd Simon of the Niagara Falls Thunder would win the Red Tilson and Eddie Powers, while the Mad Layden Trophy going to George Burnett of the Niagara Falls Thunder. So Niagara Falls well represented when it came to the trophies. Darren McCarty, he won the Jim Mahan Memorial Trophy. McCarty, of course, would go on to play for the Detroit Red Wings of the National Hockey League. The OHL Goaltender of the Year went to Mike Fountain of the Oshawa Generals. The Jack Ferguson Award this season would go to Jeff O'Neill of the Guelph Storm. We would also see Drake Barahowski. He would win the Max Comiskey Trophy from the North Bay Centennials, while Bert Templeton, named OHL Executive of the Year with the North Bay Centennials. He was having a great run with North Bay, and then, of course, after that would join the Barrie Colts in their expansion year. Bert Templeton, quite the figure around the OHL circles, from my understanding, from stories I've heard. And winning the Ems Family Award would be Chris Gratton of the Kingston Frontenac. So despite Kingston having their struggles, great to see Chris Gratton winning the Ems Family Award. So that was the 91-92 OHL season, as the Soo Greyhounds just continuing their dominance, while the Niagara Falls Thunder just falling short each time against Sault Ste. Marie in the early 1990s. So this is a summary of the season. If there's something that stands out to you, let me know. What was your experience that season? What stood out to you as a fan of your favorite junior hockey team? And don't forget to hit like and subscribe as we'll continue this off-season series. And we'll talk to you again soon.